Hey.
Alright, yo, so we have had a pretty crazy last 24 hours or so of NBA basketball. I imagine a lot of NBA fans woke up with some warmth in their heart, checking social media, go on their phone, and seeing that yesterday was the anniversary of Kobe Bryant dropping 81 on Jalen Rose and the Toronto Raptors. Apparently, a lot of NBA players probably shared that same sentiment, as we saw some pretty crazy stat lines. It all started with Joel Embiid going out and dropping 70 points on the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama as he continues to solidify his case for the MVP as those talks start to ramp up. But that didn't even end up being the craziest storyline of the night, as an hour later we had the Timberwolves tip off against the Charlotte Hornets, and right out the gates we have Karl-Anthony Towns drop 22 points in the first quarter and second quarter to combine for a 44-point first half. And obviously, as the Embiid game is wrapping up, people are starting to transition over to the Timberwolves game. That is exactly what I did watching basketball last night. And I imagine also, like myself, a lot of people had the same thought of, wow, Embiid just had a great game, dropped 70, Sixers got a nice easy win. Now let's see Cad go out and do his own thing. And wow, he already has 44. Imagine what he can do in the second half. He could probably top 70. Minnesota's going to keep on steamrolling, moving on, holding on to the 1 seed. And they're also going to get a really easy win against the Charlotte Hornets. And so then we get to the end of the third quarter. Karl-Anthony Towns' stat line after that point is 58 points, 19 to 25 shooting from the field, 10 to 12 from 3. He's a plus 16 on the night. Timberwolves are carrying a 15-point lead into the fourth quarter. But everything is great. Vibes are high. They are vibing over in Minnesota. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to set a new franchise record. He might even beat the Joel Embiid 70-point mark that was set just a half hour ago. But then we get hit with the M. Night Shyamalan level plot twist. Everything falls apart in the fourth quarter for the Timberwolves. What happened? Now, before we dig into the actual tape of the fourth quarter, let's set the scene a little bit better, because through these first three quarters it was actually a pretty close game. Charlotte was within striking distance the entire time until Minnesota went on that big run at the end of the third quarter, got the lead up to 18 points. Eventually, cut down to 15 going into the fourth, but there were already cracks starting to show despite the big lead. Because while Karl-Anthony Towns was great, he was knocking down threes at a really high efficiency, he was getting to the rim with ease. For some reason, he had 50 points midway through the third quarter, and the Charlotte Hornets were just refusing to put multiple bodies on him whenever he tried and drive to the rim. They just let him attack his man solo and get either free throws or easy layups. But while all of that was great and dandy, the rest of the Minnesota Timberwolves were struggling offensively to find any sort of rhythm. One of the other storylines from this game is that Anthony Edwards finished with as many assists as he had shot attempts, which were both at 11, and he just never found a rhythm. He was not able to find any sort of groove whatsoever. He finished the game shooting 3 of 11, and he deservedly got some blame for the collapse, as he just did nothing offensively despite being probably the go-to guy on offense on this team. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was the only player on the roster outside of Karl-Anthony Towns that wanted to make outside jump shots. And perhaps most importantly, this Minnesota defense that has been top in the league for a large majority of the season just completely collapsed to a mid-level, bottom level, I should say, Charlotte Hornets team that, although they do have good offensive players, it shouldn't be an issue. So again, despite this looking like it was going to be a potential blowout heading into the fourth quarter, there was some foreshadowing for what was about to come. Wait, Minnesota Timberwolves broadcast. What's that? What's that about the halftime adjustments, halftime notes?
But don't lose focus if you're Minnesota. You know why? Minnesota's having a great time watching Karl do his thing, record first half. You gotta keep your focus defensively.
Right, don't lose focus. Yeah, I bet the Timberwolves will follow that and make sure they do that. Kicking things off immediately, just 1 minute into the fourth quarter, we get some more great foreshadowing of what's to come, as first play down the court, Karl-Anthony Towns jacks up a heavily contested 3. He doesn't even try to put a move on his man, just shoots a corner 3, bricks it. Then a little later on, at the end of the 11th minute, Karl-Anthony Towns then sags off and doesn't close out on a PJ Washington 3, and what started as a 15-point lead has already been cut down to 9. Now, within the next couple of minutes, we do actually see Karl-Anthony Towns produce some good buckets for his team. First gets a nice little post hook, then a drive to the rim, albeit a very contested one, does end with Rudy Gobert being able to get a pretty clean offensive rebound and put back. So the lead is back to 10. Now fast forward to the 9-minute mark, and this is where the cracks start to grow and become much larger crevices as we see Karl-Anthony Towns post up, get double teamed, and decide to try and fight through the double team and put up a layup, gets rejected, and this is where the bad things start to happen. As we see next possession down the court, they run a quick little action for Cat to get the ball at the top of the key, and he decides to take a contested, terrible pull-up 2 with his foot on the line, one of the worst shots in the entirety of the NBA game. Now, as this clip plays of Nick Smith Jr. hitting a 3 to cut the lead to 2, I will mention that the Minnesota defense did step up this quarter. A majority of the Charlotte Hornets baskets in the fourth either came from a really tough shot made like this one here, or it had something to do with Karl-Anthony Towns, which we'll get into a little later. Like this next Charlotte Hornets possession, for example, the Timberwolves are sitting back in a 2-3 zone. Karl-Anthony Towns comes up to guard Mensah as he catches at the 3-point line, and Terry Rozier takes the handoff / screen, and Cat is just nowhere to be found with the help defense, and it's an easy bucket for Rozier. Now we're about halfway through the fourth quarter. As you can see, the lead has been cut down to 1. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to try and create some offense for this Minnesota offense that is starting to show some signs of struggle, but instead he pushes with the off arm, gets called for the offensive foul, and this Minnesota offense is still left in the mud. Fortunately though, they get a stop, and one possession later they again go to the well. Is Karl-Anthony Towns, who this time is able to drive past his man without fouling him, and the Hornets resort to their quarters 1 through 3 defense, where they put no other bodies on Cat, no help defense, no rim protection, and it's an easy layup to get the lead back to 3. Now fast forward a little bit, and we again have Karl-Anthony Towns offering 0 help defense and resistance to the Hornets on this drive. Miles Bridges gets the easiest bucket of the night, and the lead is back to 1. Then a minute later, we see Karl-Anthony Towns get a wide open lane to the hoop, but he misses the layup, and while he is too busy on the ground complaining about a foul, the Hornets take it down the court, 5-on-4, swing the ball with some great ball movement, find Nick Smith Jr., who hits another big 3 to give the Hornets the first lead of the night. In fact, Chris Finch actually calls a timeout after this play, and Karl-Anthony Towns does not stay on the court. He subs him out, which I know a lot of people were making a bunch of hoopla about this decision. From what I've seen, this is a normal thing that the Timberwolves have been doing all season long. Chris Finch understands that Karl-Anthony Towns is a great offensive player, but terrible defensive player, and because he is not providing great offense right now, he's forcing shots and not playing defense, he gets subbed out, which I know is crazy on a night that he ends up scoring 62 points, but I just showed it to you guys. If you saw those last couple of plays and you were Chris Finch, I think you'd also be at least making the, it'd be a choice of whether you want to sub out Cat or not. Now the issue with subbing Cat out on a night like this is, again, this goes back to the point I made at the top of the video, where nobody else on this Minnesota team was interested in doing anything offensively. Here Kyle Anderson tries to create, but ends up getting stuck in no man's land after jumping with the ball in his hands, trying to make a jump pass, and it ends up being a turnover. Then next play down for the Hornets, and we go right back to some good Minnesota defense that is beaten by Brandon Miller just hitting a ridiculous tough fading midi, which, quick side note, Brandon Miller might have had the best game of his young NBA career so far. Funny, there was one point where the Minnesota announcers said, wow, it's too bad that Brandon Miller's game isn't going to be remembered because it's being overshadowed by the Cat 62 points, and then it ended up being the other way around. So with a little over a minute left, it's a 5-point lead for Charlotte. Karl-Anthony Towns checks back into the game because the Timberwolves desperately need some offense, and what do you know, they immediately run a pick and roll. Both defenders go over to play Karl-Anthony Towns, and it leaves a wide open lane for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who gets fouled and hits both free throws. And next possession for the Hornets, the refs even try and help out the Timberwolves a little bit as LaMelo beats his man on the switch, gets to the rim, and Kyle Anderson clearly fouls him from behind. No foul is called, and Ant immediately goes down court and hits some free throws to make it a 1-point game. So all hope is not lost. It's been a crazy night. The Timberwolves still have a chance to steal this game back from the Hornets. Let's see what happens. LaMelo Ball gets the switch onto Rudy Gobert that he wants. Unfortunately though, he forgets that Rudy Gobert is a multiple-time depoy for a reason. Gobert plays some great defense and forces the miss. Chris Finch calls a timeout to get Karl-Anthony Towns back on the court. They run the play for him, down 1 with 10 seconds left. Cat drives to the rim, clearly gets fouled. Maybe it's a makeup for the LaMelo Ball no call. And with all of the discourse I am seeing about this play, about, Cat being fouled, how it should have been called, why is he taking the shot? My personal opinion, he's got like 3-4 defenders on him. Just make the pass. Just kick it out to Jaden McDaniels in the corner. I understand that this is his night. He's got 62 points by this point, but come on, just make the pass. Either way, no foul is called. Leaky Black takes it down the court, gets fouled, hits both free throws to the delight of Eric Collins.
Free throw as a pro, but he has now. I love Leaky. 2 beauties, and the Hornets lead by 3.
Karl-Anthony Towns comes back and airballs the potential game-tying 3, and the Charlotte Hornets officially spoil a 62-point game from Karl-Anthony Towns. Overall, this was probably the most Cat game Cat will ever give us in his entire career. It had every single, extreme positive and every single extreme negative that he can possibly show you in one game. Some might call it his Mona Lisa. Either way, this was a strange game. If I'm the Timberwolves, I gotta be really careful with how these next few games proceed, because they're still the 1 seed. There's no need to raise any alarms for just one game, but at the same time, if there ever was one game that could ruin an entire season, I think it looks something a lot like this one. Chris Finch went off in his post-game interview about, this is like one of the worst games he's ever seen played. It wasn't played the right way. They disrespected themselves, they disrespected the game, and everything he said was correct. In the end, it was too much Cat, not enough of the rest of the Timberwolves, although at the same time, Cat was the only one really stepping up on offense, and the rest of the Timberwolves couldn't get in a rhythm because of the fact that Cat was going so crazy in the first half. It was just a lot of, the things going wrong at the wrong time. That's all I got for this one. As always, if you enjoy, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those good things, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.